Richard Clapton, welcome to noise11.com. Talking like 50th anniversaries. It was a couple of years ago since Prussian Blue, 52 down the track, but, you know, we're getting out there and celebrating 50 still.
Well, how are you, Paul?
I'm very well, but you already knew that.
Yes, you're looking well, yeah. Yeah, 52 years. Where did the time go? I mean, gee, I don't know. I saw a really good interview with Dylan, I think last year, and he was being asked whether he thinks he's the same person who wrote like Positively 4th Street, you know, and It's All Over Now, Baby Blue, or better still, like Masters of War or something. And he said no, and so then he was asked, well, does he think he could write songs like that again, like nowadays? And he said, well, no, because it's almost like another lifetime. So I don't look. I'm not professing to be anywhere near Dylan's level, but I can relate to that because Prussian Blue. Well, I don't know. If you ask me if I could write songs like that again, I'm not sure, because I've told the whole story about how most of the Prussian Blue album I actually wrote in that big old house in Berlin. You know, I lived there on my own for about 9 months, and so that for a start, I mean, just that environment. I mean, it'd be hard to recreate that. Oh, unless I was a wealthy rock star, I could afford to, you know, go to Switzerland or something, or Barbados and write an album. But no, so I don't know. So I hope that's sort of I'm articulating that properly, because it's not that I have any regrets about it. It's just that it doesn't. I mean, I guess my contemporary stuff just feels so much more like me, Harlequin Knights and House of Orange, etc.
Yeah, we sit here and we talk about 1973 like it was just, you know, a decade or two ago, when it was 5 decades ago. To put it into perspective, in 1973, when Prussian Blue came out, if you went back 52 years from then, you arrive in 1921. And Richard Clapton, here's a quick quiz for you. What was the number one Australian song of 1921?
Oh.
I'll give you a hint. It was written by Jack O'Hagan. Do you know who Jack O'Hagan is?
Dog Sat on the Tucker Box.
Along the Road to Gundagai, yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Did I get it right?
You got it right.
Now, I don't know whether that's a good thing or whether it's an ageist thing. Yeah, so Richard, I didn't think you were that old, but anyway.
Well, Jack O'Hagan, who wrote Along the Road to Gundagai in 1921, died in 1987, so there is a very good chance he would have heard a huge chunk of your music over that time.
Yeah, from memory. See, there again, I mean, I have had nice things said about artists from, you know, previous eras, previous generations, but even that was long ago. And that was I'll tell you the best one of that was when I was signed to Festival Records. Del Shannon was signed to Festival Records, and when I was about 8 years old, I had a paper run, you know, the newspaper. God, newspapers, schoolboys used to run around and deliver the newspapers, and Runaway was the number one hit single. You know, we're going back to the early 60s. And anyway, I was introduced to Del Shannon in the Festival Records building in Sydney. And he went, man, I just love your song. It is so like Runaway. And I went, oh, really? And I'm thinking, I'm sorry, I don't get the connection, Del, but, you know, maybe it was a subliminal thing, a cosmic thing. I don't know.
Festival Records back then. So you would have been like in the building at times with Johnny O'Keefe, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I met JOK 2 or 3 times. That was great because Festival Records used to have Friday nights in the boardroom. And they loved that if, you know, especially their pet artists like JOK turned up. And I used to be often recording right around the back of the building. I'm sure you would have been to that studio in Piermont.
Yeah, it's all apartments now.
Yeah. So I don't think this is unfair or unflattering, especially coming from me. But first memories of JOK is that all the execs would be around the front side of the building, and he'd sneak around to the studio where I was trying to work, and he'd get all his drugs out and do all the drugs in the studio and go back to the party. Anyway, if you think that was inappropriate, you can cut it out, can't you?
Oh yeah,
Oh, you.
yeah. Cut, cut, cut.
I was, you know me. I said that affectionately. You
Yeah.
know.
Okay, pop quiz. How many prime ministers have there been since the Prussian Blue album?
Oh shit, Paul. Wait. No, no, no. Don't rush me. Don't rush me. Wait a minute. Gee. So Whitlam, did Holt or Gorton come after that?
I know they were before Whitlam.
Oh, they were before Whitlam.
Yeah,
Oh,
Whitlam
oh,
Fraser.
oh, yeah. Good old Malcolm. Yeah,
Okay,
Malcolm into Johnny. What's his
Hawke,
name? Was it really before
Keating,
Floyd? Oh, wow. Yeah.
and then Johnny Howard,
Oh, okay, fine.
Kevin Rudd, Julia Gillard, Kevin Rudd again, Abbott, Turnbull,
Hell.
Scammo, and
Mm.
Albanese. 11 prime ministers, but 12 prime ministerships because Kevin Rudd gets counted twice.
Well, I'm still here.
Prussian Blue, Girls on the Avenue, Main Street Drive, Goodbye Tiger, Hearts on the Nightline, Dark Spaces, and The Great Escape with 7 albums released between 1973 and 1982. That was 7 albums in 9 years. Now, if we
Mhm.
go back 9 years, The House of Orange was your last album of original songs. You had
Oh,
one
yeah.
original album in the last 9 years and 7 in your first 9 years.
Hmm.
You would be writing constantly, I would imagine. You must have quite the vault of songs that are sitting there that could be built into some new album.
This is true, although I must confess, um, when I lost my house in Sydney, and I had a great studio underneath the house. Now, since that, I've just been a bachelor boy, so I've had to live in flats. And unfortunately, it's not conducive to having a home studio. I mean, I know all young people nowadays are just working off laptops. For me, it's nowhere near as inspiring. I find it hard to work off a laptop in a flat. So it'd be interesting to see if anyone watching this has the same experience. But however, prolific lyrically, yes. I've got reams and reams of lyrics all over my hard drives.
So, when was the last time you wrote a song?
Oh, a long time, at least 3 years, I would think. In fact, the last time I recorded one of my songs, well, the Nashville album, The House of Orange, that was about half new songs. Um, Although that was because Mark Moffat, who the dearly departed Mark Moffat, um, had a bee in his bonnet. He like Mark and I worked together when he was still in Australia, and he'd been in Nashville for about 35 years, and he had a bee in his bonnet about he really felt that I could crack that Americana market. So the House of Orange was I'm telling you that so you don't think I'm a slacker and just trying to get out of having only half original songs on an album. There was a method behind all that. Mark just wanted to cherry pick what he thought were the best songs I'd ever written, and whether they were old or new.
Is
Of
that
course,
why Liberty Bell? Liberty Bell was from the Rewired
yeah,
acoustic
yeah,
album
yeah,
a
yeah.
decade earlier. That got resurrected for that reason, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Because I mean, really, I sat in the passenger seat, and Mark pretty much, I just wanted to give Mark full latitude to be a proper record producer. I mean, pretty much the same sort of record producers Richard Batchens was in the 70s with me. Richard Batchens having produced my first, what, you tell me, Paul, 5 or 6 albums. Yeah, but anyway, Richard did Goodbye Tiger and Girls on the Avenue, etc. So yeah, um, I just let Mark do the full selection because he already had access to every record I'd ever done. So he just picked them all out himself. But anyway, I digress. I realize I'm digressing. Um, so once again, to recap, yeah, I've got reams and reams of lyrics. But what I was trying to say 5 minutes ago is I'm finding it hard living in a little flat with only a laptop. and Pro Tools, there's the industry, or the industry standard for home recording, um, is just sadly, I don't know, they just don't support it anymore. Even Pro Tools has become a little toy town sort of thing that I'm just not into.
Well, I guess
Um,
while there's only been 3 albums of original material in the 21st century, it has been about quality, not quantity, hasn't it? So, songs from those 3 albums, things like Dancing with the Vampire, Liberty Bell, we just talked about, Something About You, a very important part of the set list these days.
yes, and before we move on from this topic, see, look, unfortunately, I got divorced and lost my house. And I just had the best Pro Tools studio under the house because a fan of mine who was a multi-millionaire really wanted to invest in my career. And so I said to this guy, Ross, well, look, because he pursued me for quite a while. And I said, investing in an album is really too expensive. Then Pro Tools started to become very sophisticated. So I said to Ross, look, for 30 grand, you could buy me 3 PCI cards and I would have a professional home studio down underneath my house. Now, what I found with that, and that's my favorite period of, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, using computers and software and everything to create an album. But it was so liberating, that album. And Sid, also I was divorced during the course of that album. So I was able to just sit downstairs and, I could take, I had just had so much latitude to write. And then Danny Spencer, Danny's now been with me 25 years, where does the time go? But Danny was already playing for Jimmy and John Stevens. So Danny had come up to play with Jimmy, say, for a Friday and Saturday night. And then, because, the wife had moved out of the family home and everything, I was just there on my own. So Danny had come up to Sydney because he's a Melbourne boy and move in for 3 or 4 days. We just had the best time. I think that was the most musical time of my life. And what's that? That album's 10 years or not even 10 years old. And that was the last time I had a really fulfilling period. In fact, up there amongst my most fulfilling periods of recorded music.
What album are you talking about? The House of Orange there?
No, no. No,
Harlequin.
I'm talking about Harlequin Knights, yeah. And then Rewired came after that, didn't it? I think.
Rewired was before that. Rewired was 2004.
Because you're the encyclopedic. Yeah, but Rewired was done under the house as well. That was also great fun. Because at that time Dave Leslie was still living in Sydney, and so Dave had come round, and that was great. Because Chris Becker from Melbourne would come up, and all these guys would come up and do gigs for other artists, but they just come and crash at my place, and so I just had the best musician in Australia, passing through under the house, and getting all these great musical contributions.
Let's play a game. Let's pick a number between 100 and 300.
Between 100 and 300. Okay, 200.
200. All right. We're just going to have a random topic to talk about here. From, you know this guy?
No.
Yeah. The Richard Clapton book, The Best Years of Our Lives. Page number 200. And this is me just jumping in here. The most curious song in the album was Flow in Motion. That would have to be a very vivid time in your brain, I would imagine. It was such a great record that came out of that.
I think for all of us, because Mark was doing East with Cold Chisel, and I did Underneath the Colours with the INXS. And there was a lot more camaraderie in Sydney anyway. I think that camaraderie sort of still exists to some extent in Melbourne. Where musicians from different bands and backgrounds all get together and do stuff. But yeah, because that was, Flow in Motion. Flow in Motion was written because John Farris, I think Ian Moss, definitely Jimmy Barnes and me all got into these, what you broadly call Tai Chi, but that, encompasses kung fu as well. And we're all madly into that. Um, and what I love about that record, Flow in Motion, is I've always wanted to be. Uh, uh, I'm paraphrasing Zappa. Zappa had this great phrase, "movies for your ears," and so Flow in Motion was my attempt at writing movies for your ears, to just try and convey what Tai Chi was all about. Flow in motion, and that's Tai Chi. But what's great about that, I mean, Johnny played drums on it. So we were all in Tai Chi, and Johnny did this great thing of it's pretty complicated. He got the engineer to get this delay happening on his hi-hat, so it'd come back, and he was playing to the delays, and probably getting a bit carried away here. And Mossy's guitar on it. So anyway, look, all I'm trying to say is I couldn't have wanted for more. I wanted to write a song about Tai Chi, and because these guys sort of knew what I was on about, I think they interpreted perfectly.
And, when you think about INXS, Cold Chisel, Richard Clapton, all on the one record, we'd refer to that as a supergroup these days.
Yes, and we all were on each other's records. I mean, it's taken years, but more and more, I've had to tell the story about the Great Escape and what happened with the because people people weren't aware that it's pretty much Ian Moss playing on everything. I mean, Harvey James is definitely on it, and Harvey was in my band. But Mossy, yeah, I mean, Mossy had a thing about I'm an Island. He really wanted to do I'm an Island. So then Jimmy ended up singing on I'm an Island. Don Walker played on I Fought the Law. But yeah, there was a bit of a disagreement between. Do you remember the dog, Paul Turner?
Oh, yeah.
The Grey record? Yeah.
From Water, yeah.
Yeah. So Chisel's manager called up when he found out that three of his band had been performing in my record, especially Mossy, because Mossy was all over it. And there's a bit of an altercation went down because they, I think we called him the dog because he was so gruff. I was like, yeah, you can take my band off Richard's record. Well, no way, I'm not gonna. And, because I'm the boss of Warner Music, and that's the way it is. So for years and years, it was really strange because I remember the Rolling Stone review came out that year and raving about the Great Escape, but lauding Harvey James and quite justifiably. But the wording was like, Harvey has finally established himself as the El Supremo, the master of all Australian guitar. And then when I saw Mossy a month or two after that, I was like, so what more chopped liver? I went, Ian, speak to your manager. Blah, blah, blah. So I'm sorry, I didn't explain. So no, the boss of the record company refused to take them off the record. So the compromise was to recall all the album covers from the printers and take the Chisel names off. So for years and years, but I think Jimmy was probably one of the first to let the cat out of the bag, because I did an interview. Jimmy and I were doing an interview on together on TV somewhere, and they were asking me, I'm an Island. Jimmy just jumped in and go, "That's me." That's me singing on that. It's like, really? We didn't know that was you. Yeah.
Yeah. What I think is humorous is that Jimmy Barnes singing on a record is so obviously Jimmy Barnes. Yeah. So just to remove his name from the credits would make absolutely no difference.
Yeah, but there's another song of mine called Trust Somebody. And so especially Jimmy and Ian, they played on most of my albums ever since 1980. But anyway, Mossy was I think he was plotting to put together the first Ian Moss band, and Jimmy had come in and sung backups on the track Trust Somebody, and I played it to Mossy because I wanted Mossy to play guitar, and he goes, "Oh, I love the chick. Who's the chick?" I went, "No, it's Jimmy." "No, the chick. Who's the chick?" I said, "Jimmy." "No, who's the Jimmy?" Because honestly, now next time you listen to Trust Somebody, Jimmy sings the most impossibly high.
Yeah, it's very, very high note. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't believe it's him. Not even Mossy can believe it's him.
Yeah, it's Jimmy the chick.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a couple of dates coming up. You'll be playing in Melbourne on the 1st of August, Palms and Sydney on the 6th of September. And then I think there's a regional Melbourne down here again sometime after that. But the 50th anniversary, will you be pulling out any surprises that you've never done before?
Oh, look, I do try, but it's really hard. It gets harder and harder. I mean, the more albums I release, it just gets harder and harder because I sort of had 9 radio hits. And so every gig I do, and it doesn't matter if it's a state theatre or a big outdoor festival or what it is, I always have to play those 9 songs. And we only have time to do 16 or 18 songs. I mean, the State Theatre is a 3-hour show, and I think the Palms will be pretty long as well. So look, I try and squeeze it as much as I can, but as you can imagine, with each subsequent album that I've done, like when I went to Nashville and everything, came back with those songs, I need to squeeze them into the set. So when I'm starting with my handicap sounds silly of 9, my 9 radio hits, because if I don't play Deep Water, I mean, people would.
You'll be in deep water.
I'd be in deep water. I think people would walk out. So yes, I do try and do as much as I can. Over the years, I've pulled out Suit Yourself and Need a Visionary, and I've recently started doing All the Prodigal Children from Prussian Blue because Mahalia Barnes been singing with me, and because of Mahalia's voice, I mean, All the Prodigal Children is very gospelly, so it only seems appropriate. But yeah, I do my best. But look, the one last story, I'm sure I would have told you this, but it's a good way to end up. And it's, I don't know, a few years ago, Mark Kostowski, the promoter, wanted to do songs by request. So he put out this, I guess it was a database, something like that. Thousands of people came back with their requests. They wanted to hear me play it. So the way that the State Theatre and the Palms run, is I do a 45-minute acoustic set and have a 20-minute intermission, which is mandatory anyway, and come back and do the rock set. So this year, and it's funny because we were rudely interrupted by this mate of mine, Wayne, who shall remain anonymous. And Wayne is one of these Dark Spaces fanatics, the song Dark Spaces, which is about Sylvia Plath, which I'm sure you're aware. So this year, I'm trying to do the acoustic set, with Blue Bay Blues and Walk on Water, etc. And these people are yelling out for Dark Spaces, and they kept it up all the way through. When I came back on stage after intermission, they were still yelling out, "Play Dark Spaces," F and C. And I said, you know what? Listen, during intermission, I got my calculator out. And I figure a Richard Clapton song is going to be on average 4 or 5 minutes long. According to APRA, I've actually recorded 246 songs, and I calculated that it would take me exactly 1.9 days to play them all. 2,000 people go, "Yeah, let's go," and I say, "No."
Wow,
It's really
that's almost as long as a Bruce Springsteen concert.
Yeah, I know. I've seen one of those. Have you seen one of those 4-hour shows? I've seen it 3 times in my life.
Last time I saw Bruce at Amy Park in Melbourne, it clocked in at 3 hours 57 minutes.
Yeah,
and you know what? It feels like an hour.
I know. I first saw him in, I think it would have been 1977, 78 in LA, and yeah, it was 4 hours even then.
Yeah. When he only had 3 albums.
I know. But talk about the greatest show on earth.
Yeah. All right. Well, the second greatest show on earth, of course, is Richard Clapton live, playing for Sydney and Melbourne.
Thank you, Paul. Checks in the mail.
Good to have you here at Noise 11.
All right.